Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sweet Combat Season 1, Episode 16. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, we're picking up with the conversation at the end of last episode between Queen and her brother. It's a really interesting, well, obviously we're expanding upon the Uncle G element of it all. And, Zhao was kind of bringing up, like, right, it was probably an accident, and also it was so many years ago, so I think you need to kind of let him go. But she had talked about it, for Queen, it's like, it's not that easy to let that go on multiple things. It's like, right, the Death Strike is like this loaded weapon that was just like in front of her, a loaded weapon that ended up killing someone important to her. And, for Zhao, it's like he never really got close to Uncle G, but he was very important to Queen. He was fundamental to who she is, because she's like, when you were sick, and I think they went to the States because he was sick, he was there with his mom, with their mom and dad. It's like, Uncle G stayed with me. Once again, she's talked about it with Tien, like, when she was not able to cry around her grandfather, like, her Uncle G was there to be that person. So for her, it's like losing him. And we see her crying, like tears pouring out of her eyes. Like, we never get to see her vulnerable in that means. So it just shows you how much just like struck a chord. Like I said, she was already in an emotional state. And I think, that just kind of like finally pushed her over the edge. I mean, because it's something she can't fully let go. She hasn't let go. So, kind of tied into that conversation, Yanan actually goes to Guanyan and asks him not to learn the Death Strike, just because it's like, right, how someone so important to her, so important to Queen, died because of this, which Guanyan's like, wait, are you telling me not to learn it because you're worried about me? She's like, no, it's not that, but she just doesn't think it's, like, worth it. But even Guanyan's like, yeah, but not everything's what we think it is, because he's like, looking back through the footage of that fight, like, the person who you, like, the angle and everything, plus it's like her Uncle G is a professional fighter. It's like he shouldn't have lost his life to it. So there is something more to this, and I think this is where we're going to get into the Uncle G's wife storyline, because we haven't circled back to that yet. But it's like, right, she's well off, and even Queen was like, I thought she left the country. Why is she back here? So I don't know if she got paid off. I don't know if he was meant to take a fall, or like, I wonder, did she, like, I'm like, not unless it ends up being something morbid, like she placed a bet and like wanted him to die and set it up to look like he died during the match, which is even sadder if that's the case, considering like the fallout that Tien's father felt and the ripple effect that had on Tien's family and his life. So if that's the case, my other thought was, not unless it ends up being like the company that the business that Queen and Zhao's like grandfather runs and stuff, that their family business, that I'm like, not unless they had something to do with. Once again, like, they were never shown in a nefarious means when it came to the webtoon. So that's why I'm like, that's why I think I brought that up previously when the aunt showed up, that I was like, could there be something like that? But I'm like, the company was never shown in nefarious means, but once again, that could be something they're changing for the webtoon, so there might be a little bit more to that. But I think once again, it's like, it's this storyline they're dripping out that I'm like, I'm so curious to see what the end result is going to be. It throws in this interesting wrinkle in this story, and I'm just so curious to see how that's resolving, or rather, like, find out like the bit, like, get the full scope of like what that storyline fully is in totality, like how, like, what the secrets behind it are, and what that means for Queen and Tian, like, considering they're the people who are, aside from Uncle G's wife, it's like they are the two people in Tian's family that were like heavily influenced so much upon his death, Uncle G's death. So I also love the little bit of like, right, we find out that Yanan is dieting, which she's like, no, like, she's getting on Guanyan, like, don't assume like everything's about looks when it comes to girls dieting. It's like, once again, she wants to get slimmer, so she's a faster, which, once again, straight out of the webtoon. Like I said, they poke fun at it a little bit in this, but it's like, I think it's probably just about the same, but it's more so than anyone, it's like Zhao Mida points that out, just like Dao Dao does in the webtoon. But it's like, yeah, it's because, once again, she's a little thicker. It's more specifically like her legs. She's got it, like I said, a very athletic body, but she's got thicker legs, and it's like, that is a point in the story. I'm curious to see how long they continue that, because like that was a bit for a while in the webtoon, her going on a diet and just like starving herself. which is complicated considering like in the webtoon Dao Dao and the TV show Xiao Mi when it comes to cooking, you know. So it's gonna be interesting to see how she deals with that conundrum, considering she is in fact absolutely in love with Xiao Mi's cooking. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. We have Tien having like the wildest dream. At first I was like, there's no way this is Queen's dream, right? But it's like she comes over and she's like, I can't get what happened between you and Xiao Mi out of my mind, but I'm gonna purge it from my mind. And she pushes him against like a pillar, and then she's about to like kiss him, and he wakes up. He's like, why was I dreaming about that? I gotta clear my mind, I gotta calm down. And then he thinks about Xiao Mi kissing him. He's like, I can't get either one out of my mind, I need to concentrate. I'm like, oh boy, you are in quite the conundrum, aren't you? So but lo and behold, he comes downstairs. Who's waiting for him is Xiao Mi. I mean, once again, that's kind of wild. It's like, yo, you just kind of popped into my... It's kind of like, it is what it is, but it's just like, they don't point it out too much, but it is still a thing of like, it's kind of wild that you just like pop up at my house without kind of like giving me notice. But for her, it's like, oh, like in Xiao Mi's mind, it's like, I'm practically your wife, and I'm practically like big sis to your siblings. So it's all fine and dandy. Like, I'm cooking all this food for you, and Tien wants to talk to her, like he wants to clarify where things stand between them, but Xiao Mi's like, don't worry about it. You can think about that, talk about all that after the preliminaries. And for her, it's just like she's thinking about the quote-unquote advice she got from Hal last episode, even though it was just purely her own interpretation. But she's like, right, slow boil the frog, you know, like warm boil it. So she's so excited, like, yeah, I gotta take things slow. Don't rush through it. Like, just let's take our time slow and enjoy every, like, you know, every step of the way. So it is preliminaries time, and I love Hal's mom showing up and just being so excited and pumped about the place. It's like, she's like, if any of these girls at this school became my daughter-in-law, I could retire happy and stuff like that. I love how much fun she was having. She's like, okay, I promise you, when I'm cheering for you, I'm gonna be super low key. So I thought that was beautiful. Obviously, despite everything, Queen is going to show up despite her complicated feelings about everything, because she's willing to put that all aside because this is an important moment for Tien. So obviously she's going to show up. And obviously Zhao Feng tried to get to her, being like, oh, like, you know, you're going to sit here and watch our school defeat you. But it's like, oh, she's like, I can't wait to face you in the finals and crush you. But it's like, yeah, you're going to have to put a lot more effort into it if you plan on doing that. So once again, kind of it's kind of sucky because it's like, for Zhao Feng, because it's like, Yanan has kind of one-upped you, and now Queen has. It's just like, you keep falling short, sadly, when it comes to your rival school, with those two in particular. Xiao Mi is sitting with Hao's mom as well as Tien's siblings, and eventually Queen shows up too. I think it kind of speaks volumes that she doesn't really talk to Xiao Mi. She does offer her a drink later on, but like they do not have any interaction. Just kind of like, I'm here. I should also talk about it. They don't have the bit from the webtoon, because I figured they'd be like, hey, it's too much to do that, to translate that in real life. But once again, just because of like everything about Queen, she literally would have like a very special seat. Literally in the scenes in the webtoon from the tournament, she has a very special seat she's sitting in, and also like the webtoon, Jaegu's siblings are sitting with her in this very special chair. Like, it's very like specially brought out for her and stuff. Once again, like, she doesn't really flex her money. Like, and that's not even her flexing her money. That's just like Queen being Queen. Like, she doesn't, I don't think she thinks about it too much, but that doesn't really get translated into the webtoon. Like I said, they don't really lean into like how filthy rich she is and how powerful her family is and how powerful she is. Like, they don't really flex on that too much. It kind of gets, like I said, brought up here and there, but it's not like showcased. Because once again, it's more like for a gag element for the webtoon. So either way, Hal goes on his first match, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to lose in the first match. I'm like, nope, he wins. So I thought it was interesting, the trajectory of the fights, because Hal goes up, he wins his first match, and then he ends up going up against Guanyan, which I'm like, oh, Guanyan's going to stomp him. And he kind of does. Because it's like, yes, Hal's got all these street fight moves, but the fact of the matter is he hasn't practiced his moves enough. And it's like, your street fighting is like, it's something that can be predicted. So, unlike till you like work on it and obviously won it with a heavy uppercut, you know? Which is like, obviously Hal's mom is disappointed, but obviously she's still proud of her son for doing as well as he did. I mean, even winning the first round, it's pretty impressive, so. Some other elements we should kind of probably touch on before we kind of get into Tien's side of things. we had the situation with Guanyan and Yanan, like Zhao Feng was coming up to kind of give him like raps that were like, she's like, oh, they're very lucky, but the problem is he was talking to Yanan and they were kind of like telling each other to do their best, and then Zhao Feng's like, hey, like he's like, did you want something? She's like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, never mind, which is so sad. Once again, she just kind of like, because once again, she made it clear to him too, I'm still in this, I'm not going to stop, like, I'm not going to stop liking you, I'm still going to try and make you mine type of situation. So but yeah, it's time for Tien to go up against Guanyan, and the fight goes exactly like I thought it would. That's why I was curious to see if they would do that. That's why I was so curious about the Hao and Guanyan. And I was like, I was about to say, I knew he would. I don't think he'd do that for Hao, despite Hao having some of Jaegu's storylines. I figured he wouldn't do that because it's about Tien in that moment. And so, yeah, he forfeits the match partway through, which obviously, I love the bit where it's like Yanan's dad is not too happy about that because like this is his protege and everything, came to cheer him on, shut down the gym just to watch him fight. And then like the back and forth between him and Hao's mom, I love it so much because he's like, well, it's a technicality. It's like, oh, you sound like a sore loser. You also have Tien's brother and sister jumping up and down so happy. But because obviously Tien says the same thing, like as like Jaegu says in the webtoon, like even if I lose, I want to keep going. But you know, and this is what I was. So like I was saying, this exact thing happens in the webtoon. Once again, the character is Manon. He does the exact same thing for it's similar reasons. Pretty much, it's like to give Jaegu, or in this case Tien, the opportunity to go up against his bully. Manon actually, the webtoon actually never, like, it's just heavily implied. Like I don't like the speech Guanyan gives later on to Yanan's dad, like that speech never happens in the webtoon, so you never get his specific reasons like that. It's just heavily implied, like, right, he wants, you know, it's like, right, I want you to get your get back, you deserve it. But like the extra element, and it's part of the conversation he had with Zhao Feng of like someone like using like our boxing and stuff like that, there should be honor with it. It shouldn't be used to kind of put down and bully others. So he doesn't really go into those explanations. It's just kind of, once again, just heavily implied that that's the reason why Manon in the webtoon does what he does. So it's just kind of getting that extra insight into his mind and his thought process in this is kind of interesting. But yeah, that same thing plays out just so that the main character can go up against the bully character, you know, whether it's this version or whether it's in the webtoon. But obviously he's very nervous after the fight, but they're like hyping. I think it was actually before his fight with Guanyan, I believe. They had told him like, right, I think it was Queen that was like, don't worry about winning or losing. You just focus on doing your best, you know? You've trained a lot for this and you've been through it, like you've grown a lot and you've persevered. So like go out there and do the best you can. And it's just like all four of them putting their hands together and just saying go. So I thought that was kind of beautiful. Once again, she's got her issues with Xiaomi right now, and she's feeling awkward around Tien post everything, especially because they ran into each other outside, and she was about to walk away. He grabbed her hand, but then he thought about the dream he had, and he kind of pulled his hand away. So she's probably thinking like, oh, it's because of Xiaomi, like, right? You probably don't feel right doing, you know. So it's like, right, you don't like. She's just probably running with the whole notion of, oh, he doesn't like me. But once again, she's putting all that aside because it's such an important, pivotal day. And so, yeah, the fight goes on between Tien and Yichen, and obviously the fight's like, obviously they show some of it, but obviously the fight's a little more, I mean, the fights get like obviously extremely brutal, like even in the webtoon they don't showcase it, but I mean we saw some people getting patched up, like one person like had like almost like a wrap or cast around their arm, a brace of some sort really around their arm. So like things in these fights do get brutal. And obviously, like Tien, at least how it's represented on camera, it's not as bad. I mean, his face is bruised up, and he, you know, and everything. Like he kind of gets like a little bit of a cut on his head, but it's obviously worse in the webtoon. He gets beat up a lot. Plus, I think he took some like shots to the side or kicks to the side. I can't remember. But like when he gets hit in the face, like it cuts open his head and he starts bleeding, and like it starts bleeding over. I want to say the left side of his face, if I remember correctly. I think it's the exact same place in the live action, but I can't remember if he took the guy down the same way in the webtoon or not, like a chokehold like that. I don't remember. I could have. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I'm remembering a different fight because I could have sworn Tien took him down with like a kick or something. But maybe that would, like I said, maybe I'm thinking of like a later fight. I'm conflating. Like I said, I don't remember him taking him down with a chokehold, but maybe he did. I just don't remember. But yeah, Tien, like, you know, he was taking some blows, but he focused, and especially when Yi Chen is kind of like running his mouth off about his siblings, and in that moment, Tien ended up taking him down and winning and coming out the victor. It's like, it's awesome. Obviously, it's like, you're kind of like, yeah, get yours. It almost feels poetic, too, because it's like, yeah, you weren't even conscious for your loss, like Yi Chen, so it feels even more poetic and great. So, thought that was interesting. But when it's all said and done, like Tien ends up having to bow out the tournament because he's too injured. He ends up passing out. He doesn't necessarily pass out, but he does, like, that is as far as Jaegu makes it in the tournament in the webtoon as well. Like, he only has those 2 bouts, you know, so. And the interesting thing about him, like, you know, like at the nurse's office kind of getting checked up on, first and foremost, there is a WILDS, in the webtoon, there's an alumni that works there who's, you know, she's the doctor / nurse character, but like she's kind of like I said, an alumni from the school, so she's a really good fighter. She has her moments, like she only pops up a few times throughout the webtoon, but she kind of has like a spicy personality. She can be very like, oh, like your typical like stereotypical nurse character in like an anime or something like that, but she can like be very spitfire and cut loose because it's kind of something all the ladies from the wilds have, that innate element to them, obviously. So, but we don't really get that because I was almost wondering if that's where but I'm like, nah, they're probably not gonna bother setting that character up because it's kind of like a minor character, like I said, that pops up a few times. She doesn't have any like crucial story points, so of course they really wouldn't lean into that. But the confrontation between Tien and Yi Chen, it's interesting because it's like toned down in the live action versus like Jaegu and the bully in the webtoon, because like Jaegu's like messed up and he's trying to be like, hey, like that was a great match, let's have like a, you know, try to be like sportsmanly about it, but home dude is like no, and he's running his mouth and Jaegu rips off the band-aid, his face starts bleeding and he's like, if you want to go, we can go again right now anytime you want to. And that moment, like a couple episodes back when Tien was going up against Yi Chen and punched the wall and was like, right, we'll save it for the rank, and he was backing away. He's like, you're lucky I'm tired because if I was at full strain, to be a different story. Kind of a similar thing happens here in the webtoon where he's like running his mouth, but like slowly but surely every panel you see him getting closer and closer to the door until he leaves the room, still talking shit, trying to act tough. So that's kind of the same thing, but like Jaegu was in such not a good enough position. He was just like, oh, that was him like fronting a little bit because it's like he wasn't going to back down in front of his bully and he was like too worn out, and it's like it took everything he could to stand up, and then the nurse proceeds to rip him apart or like, you know, jump on it, get mad at him for like pulling off like his bandage, and it's like, I just told you not to do that, not to like push yourself too hard. But like I said, they toned it down and he's just like, oh, like, you know, yeah, you might have won this one, but a part of the fight, it's also about luck. You got lucky this time. And you know, Tien's like, fine, we can do it again, whether it's 10 or 100 times, I'll knock you out like it did this time too. And he's like, yeah, and just kind of walks away. So it's as casual as, like, it's not as, like I said, heated. It's still implied, but it's not nearly as heated. So that's why I'm like, it almost comes off better for the bully character because, like, once again, he's such a dick and how he backs down so hard in the webtoon, for like Yi Chen to just be like, yeah, and just kind of walk. Like, I don't know, makes him come off better than his counterpart in the webtoon, at least from my perspective. Still doesn't change the fact he's a piece of shit, but still, you know. Some other elements tied to all of this, we find out that Guanyan has backed out from being the captain of the boxing club. In fact, before his match with Tien, he like handed it over to Zhao Feng, and for her, she's pissed because she's like, is that why you handed it over to me? Because you knew like it'd be more of a blowback if you, the captain, bowed out like you did. So by handing the reins over to me, like whatever storm comes your way for bowing out the fight, at the bare minimum, like it won't fall back on the club too much because he's going to be disassociated. He's no longer the captain. So, but he's like, yeah, you've always been capable, so it's time to pass on the torch. And for her, she's assuming like, right, is the reason you're doing this for Yan'an? Which to some extent, yes. And this ends up kind of going in touch with the conversation Guanyan has with Yan'an's dad. But when it's all said and done, for him, like I brought up earlier, he brought up the points of like there's a certain spirit that was missing from their school when it comes to this, that sportsmanship and like using like it to like using boxing to bully people. Because even Zhao Feng, once again, how she handled the Tien situation was not the best way to handle that. That's why, like, out of anyone, he was the only one that handled that like Tien situation very diplomatically. Like, no one bothered to stop to listen. So, but and Zhao Feng did not want to hear any of this. She's like, fine, you want to do that. And so she later on overhears not even the entire part of the conversation between Yannan's dad and Guanyan, where it's like, because it's like he's acting like he's disappointed in Guanyan until he points out, like, I know exactly why you did what you did, so you don't have to explain. You did it so that Yannan's student could get his revenge. And it's like, you doing that for him is pretty much the same thing as you doing that for my daughter. He's like, a real man knows when to submit. It's like, right, doing something for love. And it's like, right, I will continue training with you. And all she heard was like, oh, by, being with my daughter, you treat my daughter well, I'll treat you well. And so she's hearing like, oh, you only did this, you only got close to Yannan for the purposes of learning the Death Strike, which is not the case at all. In fact, that was the initial deal, but he backed out of that deal. And also, she missed the first part of the conversation where it's like, but still, and Zhao Feng is like, oh, you want to be like that, Guanyan? So you're like, you immediately know where that's going. She's going to use this as ammunition, because it's like, right, if I can't be with you and you're not going to choose me, I'm going to ruin any chance of anything between you and Yannan. I'm going to make her kind of hurt as much as I do, which is going to be interesting considering where the story goes, potentially for the equivalency of their characters in the webtoons, that being Hie-Shin and Moon Young. Like I said, a lot of this dynamic does not exist. Once again, Guanyan, his character is actually with Zhao Feng's counterpart in the comic, in the webtoon, Hie-Shin. Like, those are implied to be a couple, even though it never like officially happened. I talked about it before. So that's what makes it even more interesting, especially where that story goes and how they're going to handle that live action, considering like how they've set up that story and what that implies. I'm also curious about the Queen element of it too. It could still happen next episode, so that's why I'm not going to be like, oh, are they going to do it or not? Without really going into it, Queen isn't able to participate in the tournament. So, like, she ends up kind of, like, not being able to participate, even though she's, like, in the finals and stuff like that. But she can't actually participate. So I'm curious to see whether... Because I think it's, like, basically family business stuff comes up that prevents her from being at the school and being able to participate. So I'm curious to see if they do a similar thing, or will they make it so that she participates, or will the tournament play out exactly like it did in the webtoon? I'd assume not, because there's also an angle that hasn't been set up in the live action that plays a role in the webtoon. But once again, that storyline could be shifted from many different ways to make it still happen. So that's why I'm not discounting. That's why until we get to that point in the story, I'm not going to discount the possibility of things happening. But I'll talk about it more when we actually get to like the finals of the tournament and seeing like how they end up handling it. But then my point before I went on this whole diatribe, it's just kind of sad, because like Yannan, I think it's all going to work out in the end, but like Guanyan really legitimately just likes Yannan, and he's made his intentions clear all the way through. But sadly, Yannan is probably going to take a lot of what Zhao Feng says to heart, and especially after they already had the conversation of don't learn the Death Strike and what that meant. Because even I didn't talk about it last episode, I forgot to talk about it. In fact, Queen had said like, if Yannan ever learned the Death Strike, that her and Yannan could never be friends anymore. So that's what complicates things too, because it's like, yo, the guy that I like, that I'm not really letting on that I like, who apparently likes me, if he learns the Death Strike, that's like, even though I asked him not to, especially knowing how important that is to my best friend, it's kind of like, it's a double stab in the back. So it's going to complicate things in the long run for them. I didn't talk about this earlier, but I also really appreciate like the very what was a very nice shit talking between the presidents of both schools, which I love. That was just like, hey, don't be too disheartened if my students crush yours. Oh, I was actually going to say the same thing to you. It's like, I mean, to be fair, like the school that Guanyan goes to, yeah, the president kind of got up and left the moment like Guanyan like forfeited his match. To be fair, even Zhao Feng is like, yo, the president of our school is not going to be happy that you did that, you know? But, you know, he has, in his mind, it's like, right, I have a clear conscience of why I did what I did, and I think it was the right move to make in the long run, you know? You know, yes, it was partially for Yanan, for a good chunk of it was about for Yanan, but I think it's also like for the spirit of what they're, for the spirit of their, what the boxing represents and stuff like that. It was also meant to kind of be a learning and teaching moment for Yi Qian as well. So either way, we get to the end situation where Tian stands before the president and director, him, Queen, Yanan, and Zhao Mi, as it's like, right, his fate at the school is being determined. And it's like, well, it's all going to be based on how well he did in the tournament, which is still the thing of, hey, if you're kicking him out, we'll go too. And he's like meandering a little bit. Even Tian, even though it's like it's Yanan being like, could you please just stop meandering and just sighing and just let us know your decision? But basically, he kind of has a sly way of going about it, where he's basically like, well, because Tian's like, right, whatever, I didn't do well. My first match against Guanyan, he forfeited. The only match I've had was really one match, and I won it, but I immediately passed out afterwards. So, like, this was all based on the criteria how well I did, which I love. Eventually, like, the president was like, why? I haven't even finished talking yet, and you're already complaining. Stop it and let me finish my point. But he basically says, like, right, it's kind of on the director, because the director never actually set up what the exact criteria for Tien to do. Like, how well is he supposed to do? It was super vague. But it's like, so it's like, comes down to my personal opinion. And he's like, what you displayed, the perseverance, it was superb. We're going to be proud to continue to have a student like you represent our school. And so Tien gets to stay, and he's like, I wouldn't be able to be here if it wasn't for the three of you training me, just everyone here. I should also note that whole element of him potentially getting suspended and all that. Like, I think I've talked about that previously. None of that is from the webtoon either, because him being removed as Queen's opponent and having to go through the preliminaries, that in itself was his punishment. But that was actually kind of a prearranged thing before he went to like go after Yi Qian in like in the TV show, but the bully equivalency in the webtoon, like him going after him, going at the school, causing that whole ruckus. That was the end result, was him being part of the preliminaries and being forced to no longer be Queen's opponent. That's how that played out versus in the webtoon. So just kind of interesting all around. But yeah, once again, it also seems like we aren't getting some of the preliminary matches we did in the webtoon. I should talk about it. There was this one character that I don't know if he was placing bets or something, because he was like, oh yeah, level people. I'm like, is that who I think he's supposed to be? There's a kind of gangster gang dude who Hal has certain characteristics similar to. He's he's another character that I'm like, Hal kind of seems like he's taken from him a little bit with just the whole dog situation. I don't know if that's who he's supposed to be. I don't know if that was him placing bets or what it was, but there's at least two characters that participate in the tournament in the webtoon that are very much against it, kind of thinking like, oh, there's no real competition. So I don't know if he's the one dude I'm thinking of. Slight spoilers. I don't know if he's supposed to represent the dude who eventually starts working at the car wash with Jaegu in the webtoon. I don't know if that's supposed to be who he is, or he's supposed to be that gangster character. That's kind of like a recurring, like kind of a small, like minor but recurring character in the webtoon. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where that storyline goes, but it seems like they're setting up something there. Not unless that has something to do with like maybe it connects in that capacity, and maybe that in itself might connect largely to the Uncle G storyline, because maybe there's something there. So, because obviously maybe that fight had something to do with like bets and stuff, and maybe that's what, I don't know. That's just me spitballing a lot of that right now. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. Obviously, the tournament isn't even over. I don't know if this was I don't think it's all the preliminaries. Like I said, like some of the other fights we're not going to see. I figured we'd only focus on our main characters, obviously. But it's going to be interesting to see where all of this takes us, like I said. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.